Good morning, everybody. Robin Ayub here from the Localization Fireside Chat. Welcome to another episode. With this episode, we're recording, and I'm going to get the count right, 200, I never do, 259. Today is Friday, July 24th. Hopefully it's warm and sunny wherever you are. And if it's evening for you, well, good evening. If it's morning, good morning. And whatever country you're joining me from, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. Today's conversation is I've been waiting for this one, actually. It's long overdue, in my opinion. My guest and I, we've known each other for many years. And this particular conversation, we talk a lot about conversation on this channel about AI, technology, languages. How do we connect the world one piece at a time or one language at a time? But this one here, it's pretty interesting. Gary Kalaci, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Gary's a lawyer, by the way, for the audience, who turned founder, who spent more than two decades building a company here used to be called Alexa Translation. Now he rebranded a few days ago or a few weeks ago. It's called Apertera. And Apertera is a language solution that is AI first, built around regulatory industry. And when we talk about AI, we talk about technology, and we hear, about the do's and don'ts. Things didn't work. Things worked. It's a mishmash of things. So when you deploy AI, for instance, one thing I hear quite a bit is hallucination. You talk about, AI needs guardrail in place. It does not work in a regulated environment because people are worried about security, where it works, where it doesn't work. But Gary has found a solution. And first, what I have three, maybe a few categories of this conversation I want to get into, Gary. One is for the audience who don't know you, and I know you well, but for, the thousands of people listening to this and they don't know you, first we're going to get to, and I know it might sound redundant, we're going to get to know you a little bit, if you don't mind, Gary. First, absolutely, I want to welcome you to the conversation. Thank you.
Well, Robin, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I was looking forward to our conversation, and I had Robin as a guest on my podcast a couple of years back, and this is now the roles have reversed. So he has some hard questions for me today, and I'm looking forward to it.
It's long overdue conversation. I should have had you on the podcast a long time ago, but I know how busy you are. And from me and the audience, I want to congratulate you. By the way, for the audience, Gary just became a new father. Him and his wife, they welcome to the world a new baby. So congratulations. From all of us here on the channel, Gary, to you and to your wife and to your family, we wish you all the best and lots of health and success in the future.
Thank you very much, Robin. Child number 3, which makes it a little easier to know the way around than when you're a brand new father for the first time. So.
Absolutely. Now, Gary, as we say on this channel, everybody's got a story. So why don't we start with this one? What's your story? What got you here?
Well, and I'll go back to, I know you mentioned my background as a lawyer, but before that, I had been an interpreter. And it really started I'm originally from Albania. In 1999, I was in Albania when the Kosovo crisis happened, when you had a lot of Kosovo refugees coming into Albania. There was a lot of need at the time for interpreters to be able to interpret, because you had all these foreign aid workers operating in English and Italian, etc. But Albanian was a limiting factor. So I volunteered as an interpreter, and that was sort of my first foray into it. Then met some people from UNICEF and Save the Children, and I became an interpreter for UNICEF and Save the Children. As I moved to Canada, I thought, and I really enjoyed being an interpreter. I thought, is there an opportunity to actually do some of that here? And I became an interpreter for the Ministry of the Attorney General, doing some court interpreting, and then interpreting for immigration, etc. So in a variety of different contexts, but that was sort of my initial exposure to the language industry. And then slowly creeped into translation, which was obviously, as anyone in the language industry knows, a very different beast than interpreting, but sort of in the same realm. At the time, I thought maybe this is something I do during university and during law school, etc. It was only as some time went on that I thought there's a real opportunity here to make this into something well beyond just something on the side while in university. So I made that decision after a couple of years in the legal practice, and I said, I need to really focus on this. And here we are. This is many, many years later.
So it's very interesting, though, Gary. You've had an experience being an interpreter, and you touched the language industry early on. But most people who have the same experience as you did, they normally go to study linguistics or any form of languages at university. But you decided to go to do a law degree, and then you convert it back to language. I'm just trying. The career trajectory is it's a little different. I mean, it worked out well for you, but why legal versus going into linguistic initially?
For sure, and I think partially at the time, Robin, was that I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and this was just something that I was going to do on the side versus I'm going to do this for a living. I always enjoyed linguistics. I think I've always had a passion for history, anthropology, linguistics. They're so all so intertwined, and it's still a big hobby of mine. I read a lot about it. I think nevertheless, despite all of that, language professionals are such masters of their craft. And I was always the business guy. So I did the law and MBA program, and I thought, okay, there's professionals at the language that are likely going to be better at this than I am. But let me see if I can bring the need together with the customers and then get the professionals that are truly the masters of their craft to be able to
Link
service.
it together. So you must have seen a gap then, and that created that business idea for you, right? So you must have determined there is a gap here. I'm noticing, and I got to go fix that a problem, and you found a solution, obviously, right?
Absolutely. And I think you have you and I have been in this business long enough that 20 years ago, the translation industry was growing fast. And as it is today, it continues to grow in a different fashion, mind you, but it continues to grow. So I was also trying to look for this highly specialized areas, and I gravitated towards the legal financial space considering my background. And I thought, this area keeps growing as Canada becomes a larger and larger country and does more business internationally. Canadian organizations are going to need this in a variety of different languages. So I thought specialize. So as we actually started with the business, the scope got narrower and narrower because I said, really in the legal financial space we can do a lot more in the highly regulated industries than we could, for example, in areas that we didn't have the same level of specialization or where there were a lot of organizations that could do a pretty good job at it. So the niche piece of it I think was important because that's about any business, right? The blue ocean theory, like when you actually create a niche, it's easier to become better and better at it and then add value to your customer.
Now, from the background perspective, it helped you position Apertera, formerly Alexa Translation, in the context or in the market segment that the company operates in. Early on, did you see like the linguistic, because there was linguistic companies, there's language companies back then, and many of them that were doing, many types of translation. But I'm assuming you saw something like the translators or the language vendors are letting things slide. And as a lawyer, you probably would have thought, I can't let that slide. There must be some better way of doing this. Did that happen to you?
I think what it was, Robin, was that most translation organizations I would come across at the time would be like, hey, no matter what you need, we can do it for you. So it's almost like they were, if it was anything to do with language, translation, interpretation, any translation of any sort, yeah, no problem, we'll do it for you. And it's hard to be able to do all those things and do them well, right? So this is, I'll give you an example. Some of the largest law firms in the country won't do criminal law and family law. And that's for a variety of reasons, but there's certain areas they don't touch because they're like, we are focused in certain spaces and we'll do better at that as a result. And some of the largest ones, the most profitable ones in the country, will even focus in securities and M&A transactional type work. Very narrow, but so good at it, and those being large transactions. So that's what it really was, is that if you try to do everything, you can be good at it. It's even, from a business perspective, it's also hard to make money from it. Because it's hard to know how to build a margin, etc.
Now, from 2 decades, being in I would call it it's a long time, 2 decades in what I call a single lane almost. You stayed in the same lane, and sometimes does it feel narrow for you? Does it feel getting narrow? Like what I mean by, for the audience, a single lane is a single industry sector or a couple of industry sectors that you're specialized in. Does that feel like it's getting narrow for you, Gary, or?
So the narrowness, Robin, is if you were just doing one country or very specific organizations, then it can be narrow. But if you think about some of the industries we focus on, they drive a lot of the economies, and as you have a lot of the Canadian, U.S. economy, et cetera, grow, then there's more and more of a need. And I think globalization has meant translation is more omnipresent. So we haven't found the need to have to broaden industries per se in order just the market is sizable enough. And I mean, that is when I get asked sort of by early entrepreneurs, what are some of the things we should do? I always say try to find some focus because it makes you better. You're not fighting in too many different directions, trying to become good at too many different things and switching gears as often.
Yeah, my experience with language companies is, as you know, and as you've seen many of them around you over the years, is that they tend to go horizontal, and it's considered to be a horizontal service, right? Anybody with content needs to be translated. Obviously, you need a language vendor to help you out. But the specialization that you picked, and you went deep instead of 2 inch thick and mile wide. You went like 2 mile down, and you want it to stay within that lane. One could anticipate that there are going to be a lot of expertise gained in that specializations, which makes Apertera and Alexa Translation formerly a specialized company in the market sector, that somebody would come in, like another vendor would come in and say, we do legal, or also we do financial. Okay, yeah, you do it, but there are people with it more in-depth knowledge in the topic. I'm assuming that's what you were aiming at.
For sure. And I think, Robin, you'll also remember we had a coffee back in 2015. So that was 11 years ago. Yeah, if I recall correctly, it was summer as well. So, and this was a time when we were really trying hard to go into the technology space. And that's because you were seeing technology get better. Think of people were using Google Translate commonly because there weren't as many other options at the time. So to use that as an illustration, and you could see it getting better by the day. And so we had this sense that, okay, there will be entire segments of the market that technology will take a big chunk of it, still with professional intervention, but that professional intervention will become far smaller than it may be today. So back then we were actually trying to develop technology on our own, and we were working with a Canadian university trying to develop something that could be leading edge, until we got to the point where we said we're going to do an acquisition. And it just short-circuited us getting to the technology that we could deploy to the market versus developing it all on our.
That's an interesting point, Gary. Most companies decide to invest and build their own stack because they get to a point where they say, well, what we do is very specialized and nobody has a out of the box kind of a scenario for us to help us out technology wise. You decided to, from an acquisition strategy, is to add another company to complement what you're doing and to expand what you're doing. What's your advice on build versus buy?
So, and I'll dissect it a little bit, what happened in our case versus what I find in the market now, Robin, just on because the build versus buy is something I spent a lot of time talking about for a long time. So in our case, especially at the time, we weren't really finding anything in the market that we could just repurpose, customize for our need and be able to offer it to our clients as a good solution. So neural machine translation at the time was relatively new, and the company that we ended up acquiring was a Canadian company that used to be publicly traded. And we said, can we now repurpose that technology in the areas of focus that we're on? And when we first started, we said, let's just be the best at Canadian French. So we only did English, French, English, and added other languages, just so you could prove the model in one place. But at the time, it was really driven by, let's develop something because the market isn't quite there yet to have something. So I would like to think we were avant-garde at the time. We had this paranoia that technology is going to move faster than it did. It's certainly there now, but we were hypothesizing that it would be there by 2020. So we said we need to move fast, and in fact, like, we were thinking that we're not moving fast enough. So
even today, Gary, like when you look around, like from an acquisition landscape, you see the industry around you. Everybody's trying to buy revenue, and that was my point on the conversation here: is that everybody's going around saying, "Okay, well, I got to buy, I got to expand," and sales are flattening. Most of the companies in the industry are saying sales are flattening. So what they're doing is they're going out and buying revenue to add to their book of business. You took a different approach. You said, I'm going to buy the tools to allow me to grow in the industry that I'm in. You could have bought more revenue if you wanted to.
For sure.
But you decided to say, okay, I'm going to buy the hammer, the nails, the structure. I want to put it together. And then I'm going to go do better at the industry that I'm serving. Is that was part of the strategy too?
Well, it's a bit about where the market is versus where the market is going, Robin. And my advice to entrepreneurs is to plan for where it's going and not where it is right now, right? So our thought process at the time is make this investment that would take a long time before it paid off, but that we believe strongly that's where the market was going. I mean, how many people, so our conversations with that company started in 2016, by the time the acquisition was completed, it was 2018. How many people were really talking about AI in 2018 versus now? now, right? Like it was a much smaller segment of the
Yeah,
population.
2015, they were still trying to understand statistical machine translation, Gary.
Exactly. So that's so it was very much, the when people ask Henry Ford, he said, when I go to my clients and I say, if I ask them, what do you want? They say faster horses, and he's like, whereas I'm trying to get them cars, which is where they're ultimately going to go. So it's a little bit of trying to do that. So if you think about buying revenue and doing the same thing over and over again, it's not necessarily helping with your margin or being more efficient, versus the right tools, as you mentioned, can really help with that efficiency. So you don't necessarily need to add a lot of net new sales in order to be more efficient. And that's where technology comes in. But then technology also gives you potentially new revenue streams that didn't exist in that fashion before.
Now, you recently took Alexa translation to Apertera through a rebranding process. And my understanding of, and I've known the company for many years through you and through the team that you work with, Alexa Translation was like a strong brand, and everybody knew the company. Everybody can connect with the company in our sector here, at least. And the rebranding part, I think there was a signal in the rebranding, and I'll wait for you to let us know what that is. What was the internal conversation that led you there, and how did the name came about? I guess. In what you can share with us. I know we don't want you to give the secret sauce here, Gary. Just whatever you can help us with.
I think, Robin, I've been known to be a person that is pretty transparent, and I don't beat around the bush. So I'll be sort of give you the full background. But I'm just to tie it into our rebrand and what led to it. I'm going to go back a step to a question you had earlier that I didn't quite finish off, which is buy versus build. So I'll tell you sort of where we are right now. And we procure all kinds of tools for all kinds of purposes within the organization, and we use the same mentality and the same logic when we make those assessments as when we go to our clients. So here's right now, organizations, especially large organizations, have LLMs that they've repurposed for their purpose, or small language models, and they have R&D people, let's call them people, that can say, hey, we can develop something for you, etc. And there's smaller purposes that are custom to that organization that they may get to that result faster. But part of it is, and this is there was a meme when Gen AI came out where it said, where coder said, oh no, we're going to lose our jobs. And then the second sentence after it, never mind, that means our clients would know exactly what they would need. So no, we still have a job. So when you think about it, it's not just ability to build, it's about assessing, designing, effectively triaging, etc. So the lens I would give anybody that looks at any technology is this scope simple enough that with this team I can come up with something, versus go and procure a tool and sort of try to do a quick cost analysis of what those people cost. Now, if the organization on the other end producing that technology is a large team, and then the thinking is it, can I just use this versus go and produce something of our own? Then the thinking is, okay, they have a large team, it's hard to replicate it here. Then it comes to, can they help me customize it, and can they help me implement it? Because if they have a large team on the technology side and they can also help you customize it and implement it, it absolutely makes no sense to try to do something on your own, because it's just that level of resources, all from the people that do the design, the development, the testing, the QAing, the people that do the implementation, is just too much to have to do internally. So smaller scope you can try to do. If it's larger scope, then the next question to ask is, are they going to help me implement it? Because the implementation stage is one of the hardest ones for success. But if you have somebody that is willing to work with you and sort of be a partner along the way to help customize it to your organization, that makes a huge difference. So
yeah, the rebrand.
So that's why I was tying it to the rebrand. So what that meant for us was that having good technology was only part of it, and having people that can actually help you get there is a big part of it. So Apertera plays to aperture. So if you think about aperture, it's the right mix of AI or technology and people to actually, because in certain organizations it may be far more self-sufficient and it's far more technology heavy, and the people have to play a smaller part. But in other organizations, you need far more people involvement because they may not be as resourced internally. So Apertera, which also, if you sort of dissect the word, is also an era of opening opportunities based on Latin apert. So that was the playing on the opening of a camera, so aperture, as well as an era of opening opportunities. Now, at the same time, as I said, if it was fully closed, if it was fully technology without any people intervention, there is no, you don't get a picture if there's no light going in the camera. So if the aperture was fully closed, just so technology, there is no picture. So people are an essential component of it, and I say this now as a technology CEO. It also enabled us, Robin, and this is where I've always been transparent. Alexa translations, the term translations, limits you to just translation. And a lot of the technology we've developed can be used in time beyond translation. So in time, we will do things beyond translation. And that's what it enables us to do without the name limiting.
Now, a lot of companies, and you've probably seen this, rebranding around AI, for instance, Gary, right? So everybody now is throwing AI in their name. And hoping to, I don't know what it is, just to get more clicks on their names, I guess, or whatever the case may be. But they're still offering the same services. I am glad to hear you that you're rebranding because you're intending on offering other things. You're trying to offer other services, and you want to allow and I love the name Apertera, specifically the way you've described it, Gary, where you are injecting the right mix of solution into it. It's not one solution fit all to everybody. You're probably going to have depends on which client you're serving, I'm assuming. You got to have a little bit of an AI, a little bit of human, a little bit of technology to process to facilitate all this together. What do you think of the idea of, some companies are offering rebranding just to say we've got AI, but I don't know, their services are not changing.
I think putting the word AI in it, Robin, is these days, if you don't use AI in some capacity, you're almost out of the game. So it should be baseline. Throwing the word AI should almost be redundant. And nothing against organizations that use it. I mean, like it just means that they believe sort of that to be an essential part of everything they do. I like to say we were in AI before AI was sexy. So we didn't feel like we had anything to prove. And to say Apertera AI, for example. And in fact, before the rebrand was launched, we did trainings with our team and we said, Apertera, we're not saying Apertera AI, we're not saying Apertera translations, it's Apertera. And that was the rationale, is that AI is obviously a critical component to everything we do, but it's not the only.
So after the rebrand, you probably had some conversation with some of your customers, Gary. What would their reaction to the name? What would the market? What did the market think of the new brand when you launched and you shared the news with everybody?
Well, I'll tell you, we had been around for so long with the previous name that you had a lot of organizations like, oh, now we have to get used to a new name. But the explanation, talking about how we came up with the name, really put things into perspective, and that it really resonated with our audience. I think we need to do a better job at keep telling that story as to tying it into the name, because it really makes a lot of sense. But look, customers appreciate it. They appreciate that it's a consistent part of our evolution. Internally, Robin, we've also, one of the drivers with our team has been, it's a new pace. We're moving at a faster velocity than we ever have. And Apertera, and in its new fashion, it's moving even faster than Alexa translations did. Alexa translations was avant-garde. Apertera is now going even faster.
So let's talk a little bit about the foundational technology that I know the team and yourself have built over the years, and your marketing or you're selling to your customers. And so for that one, would you mind walking the audience through what you and I have talked about this before, purpose-built AI or technology solutions for the legal and the financial industry? What does it actually mean from an architectural level? I mean, beyond the pitch version, I mean, it has to have a foundational building blocks to allow for this to take place. And some CTO on the other side, chief technology officer on the other side, look at this and say, yeah, that makes sense. Or no, absolutely, this doesn't make sense and we can't deploy it here. Would you mind taking us through this, if you don't mind, Gary?
For sure. And Robin, this was the premise a little bit. So right now, as you can imagine, neural machine, which was novel at the time of our acquisition, was brand new to the market. It was moving quickly, and we were one of the first adopters in the world of it. And it tells you the pace of technology. It's already outdated in many ways. It's outperformed by the small and large language models that are out there. So the pace, needing to continuously evolve, and that what I like to call healthy level of paranoia becomes an important part of it. But whether it was neural or whether it is in our current state, one of the things we set out to do from the beginning is being good out of the box. So being able to use our technology and say it's great for legal financial work, in regardless of which language combination. It's a small incremental win, because no matter what alternative they would use, the jump, regardless how much it's trained for this, it's still industry. You can tell it knows the industry better, but it doesn't necessarily know the organization that you're working for better. And we said we're a B2B solution. So if you go to our website as an individual and you can't even access our tool. We only set this up if you're an organization, that we can pre-train it for their purposes. So what we set out to do is, yes, let's make it very good for the industry, but then easy to customize to a particular client, and then work with the team at that client to adopt it effectively so that they can see that evolution. And then every quarter show really good progression towards their end.
Now, I'd love for the audience to understand this one as well. I just want to make sure that we flag this. There's a lot of companies right now, they're claiming jurisdictional or data jurisdiction on specific solution deployments, right? So say, oh yeah, we deploy it on premises, or we put it in Canada, or we put it in whatever country the customer selects to do that. And this is just recent, by the way, but you've been doing this for many years. I mean, the idea, the notion that a customer can contain these solutions, can deploy these solutions and contain them to their purpose, to their need, within their network, within their parameters. I think that's not new for you. You've done this for many years now.
Well, Robin, when we first got into this, clients had a hard time with the cloud as a concept altogether. They were saying, oh, unless you can do it on premise, forget it, we can't even do it. And we had to sort of fight the battle of the cloud, saying, look, the cloud just means servers are somewhere else. And our servers we actually had servers on our premises, especially in the early days, and then servers based elsewhere in Canada. But we had to fight that battle before there was the sort of the knowledge that is right now, where if you go to clients right now, you'll seldom get pushback that something needs to be on the cloud. But understanding, okay, where are the servers of that cloud based, and where is this model actually based, and what does it look like? We had been answering that for a long time, so we just made sure that now that there is more general understanding of this, it's easy to explain, be like, here's how we process it in Canada, here's exactly where the servers are, here's the process it follows. And here's why it's important. It's important because the world will always have sort of cycles, but that sensitivity around sovereignty and
data governance, right, Gary? You just like data governance is pretty big, and I do have I've had so many conversations on this topic. This entire jurisdictional of data, like I want to make sure my data is. I know where my data is going. I know where my data is residing. I know who's got access to my data, and for many years people tried. And they put a server somewhere, and they just say, "Okay, we're in Canada. We just deployed it on, Azure or one of those." But the back end of all this, and I've seen many of these scenarios, is still connected to somewhere else. I love the idea, specifically now in our geopolitical environment that we're in, and everybody's talking about buying Canadian, for instance, and for our Canadian customers, for our Canadian audience, this is pretty important. If you are considering a Canadian solution, like you want a Canadian solution, I'm assuming you want a Canadian solution. You want to deal with a Canadian company. You want to deal with a Canadian tech company. And one of the things that I always, we don't do a good job in Canada, generally speaking, and I'm talking about the entire industry, about telling our story. And I love for this podcast today to be recycled 100 times, because I want this to be going out like crazy, that this is a viable solution now. It's deployed for 20 years, continuously being enhanced. It is Canadian. What do you want me to do? Badge it with a Canadian maple leaf on it? It is Canadian. It is here. So the servers are in Montreal. They are deployed anywhere. You can deploy them in Canada anywhere you want to. So it is. And the reason I'm articulating this so clearly for people to understand, there's that misconception out there that Canadians don't have solutions of such. There's no Canadian company out there that has the solution. And then you got a whole bunch of companies sprouting here and there, the memo queue of the world. And not dissing anybody. Everybody's got a solution, but may not be a truly, genuinely Canadian from Canada. So that's all I'm saying.
And Robin, I think for us, that was an important piece. And security and how to manage data and the bench strength that is required to do it was a big learning curve for me. I was not a technology guy. I mean, I got into technology because we found that what I call that healthy paranoia. I'm certainly a lot more of a technology leader now than I used to be. And we have, between our product and our technology team, we have about 50 people dedicated to our technology. And I'll tell you, just our DevOps team that focuses on sort of how we manage our data and how it's handled within our infrastructure, et cetera. It's quite sizable. And I had to ask a lot of questions as we were hiring for it. Be like, do we really need this many people? But you prepare for those situations where things may go wrong, etc. And then you want to be the one organizations that people could stand by versus just trying to say, hey, we made some quick decisions and this was more, strictly cost or strictly other criteria. And then you say this, you want to be able to stand by there and be robust enough in the event that something happens.
Gary, a lot of people are talking about AI hallucination right now, and but you've been thinking about this AI failure mode in a regulated industries for a year, and you put a lot of guardrails around it. What is the failure pattern that keeps you up at night right now? I mean, beside having a newborn, but what are the things that keeps you up at night that the mainstream conversation isn't really catching on to?
Yeah, so hallucinations were not a massive issue for us, Robin, just because of, if you think about our evolution, neural wasn't as susceptible to hallucinations because it recreated things directly from the data that it had. And then it wasn't until the GPTs, essentially the LLMs, that hallucinations started becoming much more prevalent. And obviously all of this has gotten better and gets better by the day. But for us, we had sort of measures in place to make sure that those were heavily mitigated. I think that our biggest sort of where we keep spending most of our time is how do you make sure this customizes to the client as fast as possible to their style? And did this generate as close to their style as possible? Did it keep the formatting in this language that it went as well as possible? And those things, and frankly, to be where your clients are going to be. So if your clients are spending most of their time in CAD tools, make their life easier in CAD tools. If your clients are spending most of their time in the Office suite of products, make their life easier in the Office suite of products. But you want to make their life easier no matter where they are, with a learning curve. So wherever they make the changes, it's learning.
Now, speaking of that, you talk about organizational context as a compounding competitive advantage, and the idea that AI gets valuable more with more time. Like the more you use it, the more you know specifics about the clients, either the language, the workflow, the standards, the terminology, the corrections that gets fed into the models. How does that actually work in practice, Gary? For those who are not familiar with this?
And I'll tie it in, Robin, to largely what professional translators do. If you're a professional translator within an organization, part of what you're doing is, these days, most professional translators are using AI to do the first round of the translation and then doing a lot of the editing around it, a lot of the relevant research. But a lot of what they do is the tone of the organization and the style of the organization. So that customization, the reason why I mentioned that as a competitive advantage is that you're trying to make that translator's life easier, or you're trying to make that professional's life easier that is able to edit themselves by customizing it from day one, but then two, learning incrementally. Every change they make is now saying, okay, I get it. And I compare it to actually hiring a junior that will work for you tirelessly, but you need to train them. They need some time to get up to speed. It's not an overnight success. And while the tools get better and more intuitive, it may make that process faster, but it still takes time. That junior will not become somebody you can rely on in just a few days of training. It's going to take some time before he can truly be your right-hand person there.
Now, you recently interviewed Rihan Akil from Avanade on your show, and you were talking about productivity gains from AI are quickly becoming table stakes, which I love that because it's not a feature, it's not like a out of the box kind of a feature anymore. You're expected to have that. And so that organization are pulling ahead, are redesigning their workflows, not just experimenting anymore, right? So if some company out there is still experimenting with AI, I highly doubt you are going to catch up at this stage, but maybe you would. I don't know. But it's some people are late to the game at this point, but you're way ahead of that. So where do the legal and financial sectors actually sit on that curve right now in terms of adoption? And are they leading, lagging, or just pretending to do one while the other one is still not being done correctly?
I think the industry is experimenting heavily, Robin, with it. So I think there's been a push from the leadership in most of these organizations to really make Gen AI something that is deployed throughout the organization.
Even inside the legal industry, Gary, you feel like law firms are going to be taking that on?
Even inside the legal industry, you see AI being deployed in a variety of areas. Now, just because that's happening doesn't mean their workflow has changed substantially. So if you think about what the one quote you just mentioned, it's that to truly get productivity out of it, you need to work differently. Not just this is just like a tool in my arsenal that I facultatively use once in a while. It's I changed my workflow, and this is now truly part of my workflow. And here's how much more productive it makes me.
Now, have you ever faced, I want to say a litigant, a senior litigator or a financial compliance officer or whatever, saying, look, I'm not going to put my name on this. I don't trust it, or I trusted enough to put my name on it. How did you deal with that trust factor, I guess?
I think trust is earned, Robin. It's and in most of these situations, you want to give them a path to understanding how it operates and how it gets better over time. I don't think you expect professionals to just put their name on something without any further input on it. Otherwise, it's just then you don't need the professional. But I think what you want is to show them here's how you how you use it effectively. Here's how you look for potential issues within it and how you can add your value. And even more importantly, here's how it learns from those changes that you made. So next time you go, it's not Groundhog Day. I mean, most tools, and this is where we've spent a lot of time differentiating, is are B2C, right? Like they're meant one directional. You don't give them feedback and then go the day after and it's highly adjusted to you. That is so critical in this process. No matter what you're using it for, it has to learn. Otherwise, your productivity is incremental.
And I interviewed Hughes McDuff on the on the channel. He's the head engineer of Google Translate. He retired now, 2024. He was his retirement year. And when he walked me through Gary through the technology platforms that I think on a daily basis there are 200 million users using that platform. They went from statistical to neural to et cetera, et cetera. And recently in 2024, just before he retired, they deployed AI to it. You can see how people are hungry. And I'm talking about the translation industry, and the users of the translation industry are hungry to fix something. I mean, when you get like 200 million users using a platform and you're relying on it day-to-day basis, and I'm assuming your customers are feeling the same thing. What is it you're bringing us? What is the new thing that you're bringing us that's going to make my business better? But you mentioned something very interesting, and everybody like I interviewed, they agreed to that. Is like you cannot you cannot put technology on top of a bad process. And I'm not saying the process is bad, but when you take the current processes in context, what the new technology can offer, you'd feel, okay, I have to re-engineer the process now. How many people are you helping your customers re-engineering the process? Or are they willing to re-engineer the process? Or they just want to, here's the process, I'm not changing anything, I just want technology on top of it?
Well, I think for all our clients, Robin, we have what we call a dedicated client success manager, and their job is to work with his clients around their processes and how to optimize the technology. It's hard to actually make clients do sort of follow proper process, consistently. But I think the clients that see the best results are the ones that will have somebody dedicated on their end. Almost think of like a bit of a quarterback on the client's end, saying, "I appreciate why this is important. Here's what we're going to do it. Here's how we actually look for it." And also to understand that, especially the larger the organization is, those inputs coming back are not always going to be consistent, even though the people may be from the client. I mean, it's an old joke in the industry where say you give somebody to 10 different translators, you get 10 different translations, right? Because it's just, people think differently. So then it's a bit of like, so part of what you sort of work with clients to say, hey, there's a bit of a democracy of your inputs coming in that is outlined in this. And then you can have some specific ones to different areas of your business. But that level of customization and that understanding can't just be like, let me just parachute in and out and get the great results. It has to be with a dedicated level of investment in it, so you can really see that.
And for the audience, if you guys didn't catch it yet, Gary mentioned it, but I would just make sure that it's crystal clear. The technology that Gary and his team are talking about, are building or are deploying right now in front of their customers, is purposely built for a translator as well. So user can use it, but the translator, which normally you have translators inside of these organizations or multilingual individuals using these tools, when you are building a technology for them or further keeping them in mind when you're building these technology, you are allowing them to do few things that other technology probably will not allow you to do. And Gary talked about the two-way communication, which is very, very important. Normally technologies are, query. Basically, you're querying the technology out and you're telling, the user, here's your translation. If the user says, I don't like this, or I want to change it, or I don't like the term, I want to use a different term, or maybe I want to use a different style guide, I don't know. There was no way for two-way communication. Currently, with the technology that Gary is talking about with Apertera, there is a huge advantage here for internal translation departments to be engaged fully using the tools to allow them to do better. Every translator's out there right now, and the entire industry, we used to be running on 2,000 words per day productivity. Guess what? That's out the window, and it's out the window like 5 years ago. If you're still operating on 2,000 words a day, lucky for you, don't tell anybody, just stay where you are. Don't change. But change is coming, and people are expecting a lot more productivity. The reason I'm saying this is because output is increasing, because content is increasing, right, Gary? People are creating a lot more content now, and if we are to bottleneck this at 2,000 words a day, nobody will finish their work. So the ability to make the translator a lot more productive, so they have to work less and produce more at a higher quality. Very, very important point.
And Robin, I appreciate you highlighting that, because when we talk about our user base, we say the people that would get the most use of the technology or the fullest use are translators. Then sort of second category is bilingual people, and then unilingual people. Only, frankly, clients don't have bilingual people within their teams. We won't even offer our technology because they won't get enough value out of it. It's so critical to have people with that input back. And for translators, it's particularly important because we're now at the stage where, we have this concept called workspaces. We can actually customize it to the level of the individual, where you can actually create a digital twin of the individual translator and that style, or the department. There's ways to do it, so you can get as granular as the individual. But think of building your own custom digital twin that can translate the way you do it. That's really effective.
And we talked about, I run a networking event on Fridays, 9 to 10 on every Friday. It's called the AI Exchange. And we just had a conversation on this one last week. I had somebody from Boulder, Colorado, owns a marketing company. They do geo marketing, generative engine optimization. And one of the concepts that he talked about, which they're building right now, and he actually gave me the recipe to build it. It's called virtual me. So each individual can build their own virtual twin, if you will, as you were talking earlier. This is not to be a translator, just to do your own digital work that you do on a day-to-day basis. Respond to your email, respond to your proposals, etc., which is very interesting now with the technologies that we have, and the amount of stuff that allows us to do. I use this, and I don't know if it makes sense, but I use this statement the other day. I said, every conversation we have about technology, Gary, it's like I've got milk carton in my fridge has a longer expiry date than the conversation I just had. By the time I have the conversation, the next morning I wake up, there's something new. How are you dealing with this evolution of technology, I guess?
And one of the people I had on my podcast, Robin, was Tristan Samani, who's my friend, head of digital at Citibank. And he was talking about the concept. This podcast was fall of 24. He was talking about the digital twin concept 2 years ago. So it tells you, how old it is in AI days. I think, and this is what I mean by healthy level of paranoia. We have 8 people just in our R&D team, Robin. Their job is just incrementally every week there's updates that they're providing. Certainly the amount of content they're reviewing and updating every month is substantial, but this investment in R&D is indispensable these days, and people are living and breathing it, sort of, that are if you're a technology organization and you don't have an R&D team that is just in the frontier experimenting with and staying on top of everything that's out there, you're going to be left behind.
Now, I know your solution offer technology to your customers, and you also have internal translation team that help customers. For those who are not, wanting to do this internally, they probably send it to you, say, hey, can you do it for us? The question probably that's, rattling in everybody's mind listening to us talking here is that, do you use your own technology, or do you use, basically, do you practice what you preach? or do you use somebody else's tools or technology? I'm assuming depending on the customer.
Well, and one of the Quebec universities did a case study on Alexa translations at the time on this. And this was one of the questions they asked me, Robin. So when we first deployed our technology, it was November of 2019. So we deployed our AI technology to the market because we took over a year after our acquisition to really revamp it to our market. And we launched it to our team, and we said, use it for 4 months, experiment with it, use it as you see fit. We give them some general direction. 4 months afterwards, it became part of their workflow. And he said, we're not expecting you to be more productive yet, but you now have to use it as part of your workflow. And here's how we expect you to do it, etc. And then sort of 3 months after that happened, then we started looking at productivity gains as part of that team. But the point is, has been part of the workflow and mandatory part of the workflow since 2020, more than 6 years.
More than 6 years. Oh, wow. Now, here's a personal one for you. What is take yourself back to you are an attorney, your former self, practicing attorney. Your career's on the line, just creating a situation here for you. And you were handed an Apertera output, high stake, and on a legal matter. What would it take for you to sign off on it? What would you do next, I guess, to validate? So I'm going to put my name on it, yes or no. Most of the problem that we face today in the language industry is people translating to languages don't know. And I'm assuming in this context to a language that you're not familiar with. I know you speak more than one language. You and I practice Arabic sometimes, which is always nice to hear you speak Arabic. But if I'm translating, use me as an example. If I'm translating to something in Korean, I don't know Korean, so I got to use some sort of a trust in my head to sign off on something.
So part of what organizations have done, and it is feasible, Robin, is a bit of a trust factor in what comes out. But that can be so relative. Like no matter what the percentage you give to the clients, it only means something. So I think what we found for that to truly be accountable and to resonate, which is what I would have been, is, let's say I had some internal people within our firm doing this work, is that they say, for this use cases, we're pretty comfortable that the margin of error is relatively low. So my internal translation team is saying, this use case is okay, and we can say this. Or if it's this type of use case, then we need to review it before you can sign off, but we can just do it much faster than we would be able to. And many organizations won't have an internal translation team, but that's where part of the reason why we have a professional services division in addition to our technology group is that sometimes you need that to bridge the gap. So you could do that on behalf of the client with a feedback loop to their AI platform. And that becomes the key, that consistent.
Now, I know many models out there, they claim, or they love to claim, that they do many language combinations. Obviously, depending on how good the data is that been trained on. Obviously, there are the 80-20 rules. You got like 80% of the solution at the top of the top 20 languages that they probably do well, and there's a tail languages that they don't do well. How many languages do you cover now, and what's the plan?
Yeah, so I think, Robin, that is, to your point, you can't be really good at everything all the time. So we've been at 12 languages for a long time, and in fact, we haven't added any in years, and we're not anticipating in doing any.
And I know you do Arabic well. I've seen it. It's pretty good.
And that was my point. When we first started, we just did one, and I think I mentioned earlier in the podcast, English to French, French to English. Then sort of we said Spanish and Arabic were two important markets for us. So we said we gave disproportionate priority. And that is important because, again, you're not going to be as good at every language combination. But if you have some core ones and you can go to your client base and say, this will outperform many of your other options substantially, and it'll be highly customized to you, then it's hard to argue with it.
Now, let's talk a little bit about down the road kind of thing, the vision forward. 2-year prediction. Where do legal and financial AI look meaningfully different from today? And what's the thing that surprises people about how it gets there?
So I'll answer it for legal financial AI general, and then I can speak to translation separately if you'd like me to. But on the legal financial AI, Robin, particularly, in-house counsel, so clients, if you think about the ones that are retaining external counsel, are putting some cost pressure on external firms, but not really. I think over the next couple of years, you'll see that pressure become much more substantial, and that the firms would have to actually have some lift in productivity in order to, especially in certain areas of the law. Otherwise, the ones that are going to do it effectively are going to outcompete them and it'll be very obvious. So you will see more change in process and how they work in the way they have now. And I think to some extent it's true about translators. I've always sort of been of the opinion that translation is ahead of their times in AI. So when we see right now, let's say, I mean, you are on top of these statistics more than I am, but I would say the most recent ones I saw, it's at least 80% of the translators are using AI relatively consistently as part of their workflow. You couldn't say the same thing about legal professionals, etc. So translators, in many ways, despite sometimes how tough we are within the industry, are ahead of their times. I think where we haven't seen as much advancement is how quickly this whole digital twin concept, how well I can train and how quickly to really make me more efficient and to trust it more. That's where we're going to see a big jump in the next 2 years.
I'm very surprised. I saw the same statistic, to be honest with you. And I have to say this to you and to the audience, Gary, is that I find our industry is don't accept changes that quickly and that, with open arms kind of thing. We resist change like crazy as an industry. But to see, when I saw the statistics, I'm thinking either we got scared into it. Somehow something has changed, which is very admirable. Like to see people like at that level, with that kind of numbers, adopting the new tech, the new way of doing things, it's versus other professions. And you're right. I mean, I talk a lot to other industries, insurance brokers, financial advisors, etc. They will stay away from anything that has to do with AI. And in a lot of cases, I know my financial advisor, anytime I have to sign something, he still sends it to me on a PDF form, which is scanned on a Xerox machine. I just don't know what's going on there. If someone is listening to this, let's say a leader or in a regulated industry, potentially your customer or just inquiring, who's still in the process of evaluating, what phase should we deploy this Apertera solution on an AI platform from an AI perspective, and not quite convinced or not quite moved yet in terms of making decisions. What is the one thing you want them to take away from this conversation so they can apply on Monday morning?
I think it's the speed of how quickly you can see results, Robin, versus trying to reinvent the wheel internally. I think you have all kinds of organizations right now with, and as I mentioned earlier, with LLMs, SLMs, and they say, well, you can also do translation, but to customize it to the organization, it's not just like, here's a whole bunch of data, especially, and that data is often just in English. And if it is English and French, then you have to align it effectively. You have to curate it, because not all data is it's not just about big data anymore. It's about high quality data. All those learnings and how you customize it quickly is something that we spend a lot of time figuring out, right? So for somebody to go through that journey to get to those results internally, they may be able to get there. It's just going to take a long, long time and a lot of resources. So much like the sort of the lens I gave earlier, you can hit the ground running much faster with a partner. And similarly, if you're looking at any other technologists, ask the same questions. Can they customize it to me? How will they support me?
And I did a post on this one, and it was a quite lengthy one. I guess it's more like a white paper on Copilot and the I want to say the out of the box kind of solution that comes with your Microsoft package or Google package or whatever you're using. Stack and versus the customized one. And a lot of customers I'm seeing right now, and they have sort of like the buyer's remorse when it comes to deploying these tools. They say, oh, our IT team, deployed these things for us and we don't need to buy anything new. We've got Azure. I say, okay, well, here's what's happening. I check on them like a year or two later. Things are not what they seem to be. Sort of like, I bought the car. They told me it's going to do like 50 miles an hour. It didn't.
Yeah. Well, and what I say, Robin, it's like you saying, I got Excel. I don't need a CRM anymore because I can keep all my clients' data there. So that's most of the technologies that are out of the box, that's what they will do for the organization, is they'll do a lot of the first layers, the simple, I just need to know what something says, for example, when it comes to translation. The moment you're going to customize it to the organization, it's a different beast altogether.
Where can people find you to connect with you or connect with the company? And I know for the audience, if you can't find Gary, I'll connect you with him. Don't worry. I'll find him for you.
Well, I'm pretty accessible on LinkedIn, Robin, and happy to connect with anyone. These are topics close to my heart, and I spend a lot of time talking about them. Certainly through the apertera.com website, the team is very accessible, and I promise you a strong response time. It is key to our DNA, that client service.
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much, Gary. This is good.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic joining you on the podcast.
Absolutely. I enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully the audience got a lot out of it. I know there was a lot of gems hidden inside of that conversation. Hopefully people are taking notes. I want to thank our guest, Gary Kalaci, for joining me today on recording episode 259. And for the audience, I really want to thank you for the journey of that you follow me, you work with me. And by the way, you can download the app. I keep saying that for the past few episodes. Feel free to download the app where you can find all of our content in one single place, app.l10nfiresidechat.com, where you can have it on your phone, or you can have it on your browser on your desktop. You don't need to let the algorithm try to find me. You can actually go and find me now. First, I want to thank Gary and the rest of the audience for watching us on YouTube, listening to us on the podcast channels, and also the blog post where I've seen a lot more activity now, where you can where I summarize all these conversations into a small consumable form where people can actually do research on them, go to previous episodes, and engage with the content. I want to thank you all, and I will see you guys at the next episode. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you for having me.